All right, it is the top of the hour, and we are down to David. Does not like him.
Last time he had trouble with Teams, and I've had some other meetings with him too where he's had troubles with Teams, so I'm sure he'll be here.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone to the December and final Lakeside Chat of 2024. It is exciting to see so many, it's exciting to see so many familiar faces on today's call. I'm brought back a cast of characters, if you will. I keep referring to this. There he is. We've got a David. Hold on one second. Make sure he's in. And perfect. All right. My only downside is now David came in late, and apparently Teams doesn't move his face to the top, so I have to flip back and forth when I want to see him talk, but we'll figure it out. It'll work great. All right. Lakeside Chat, year in review, December 10th. It's 9 a.m. We're going to get started. As you can see, for those of you that are joining today's call, we've got a number of faces and voices to include into today's conversation. So if any of my younger son just got finished watching and reading the Christmas Carol at school. So maybe this was the catalyst for the conversation for today's conversation around a year in review, where we are going to do a bit of the Christmas of past, present, and future throughout today's call, of a look back of what do we think the year was going to look like, and what actually did the year look like. We're going to take some time in looking at the present of today's workforce and get an idea as to kind of what is the employee experience and the leadership experience look like today. And then we are going to bust out our magic balls and do a quick predicting of the future, of looking forward to 2025 and what we think will be coming throughout the next 365 plus days to look forward to before we meet again and potentially do this all over again. And then I'll bring a Groundhog Day sort of story back to the conversation as well. We'll go a couple different directions, bring a couple movie references in throughout today's conversation. So welcome. Thank you all for being here. I am going to kick off, apparently click happy, with today's voices. So you guys have gotten to know me throughout the year. And actually, you've gotten to know some of these faces as well, because they have been my prior co-hosts on calls of Lakeside Past. And so I brought back some, not all of our, because we would have had a lot of faces if I had brought everybody back, and it would have been really hard to facilitate. Because you've been on a call before, I'm going to introduce each of you individually, and then instead of us doing a long introduction of who you are and what you do, we'll get through that as we kind of get into your particular sections. But why not instead? I've told you all that you have to answer a question. So the question I'm going to have you answer today is, what was your first job and how much did you make in that first job? So to kick off, Trisha, that's a good face. All right, I'm going to go right across. I'm going to read this like a script. So Abby, why don't you go first? What was your first job and how much did you make?
Okay, I had my first job in high school. I worked at the Burger King and I made $4 an hour.
See, I think, okay, so Abby's bringing it in low at $4 an hour, as we know where we're at today. We're going to talk about it. All right, John, you're up. What was your first job and how much did you make?
My first paycheck job was at Goosey Hardware as a handyman. I was 14 years old and I made $3.50.
$3.50. Do you know if I told my kid he took a job and got $3.50, what he would say to me today? Like, it's not even a thing. All right, Miss Nordling, manifest. Tell us what was your first job and how much did you get paid?
I'm so old, I don't remember how much I got first paid in my very, very first job, but my first career job was with Keen Consulting. They were an IT consulting firm, and I was a recruiter, and I got paid $25,000 a year and $500 per hire. So I felt rich because my husband's first job was $12,500 a year.
Oh my gosh.
So the things we do remember, it is always funny, the things that we stick with, the things we hold on to and the things we don't. Trisha, all right, you made the face, but now you have to answer the question. What was your first job and how much did you get paid?
my first job was working at Little Caesars Pizza the summer between freshman and sophomore year in high school. And I had that job because I could walk there, just walk down to the end of our street and around the corner, and there was a little strip mall, and the Little Caesars was new. So that was the first job. I had no idea what I made. What I do remember though, the big perk was if a pizza sat out for more than 30 minutes and we had timers, they had to be thrown away and remade. And so employees could take those home at end of shift. And so my family thought this job was the bomb because they got pizza almost every shift because I brought home something that somebody didn't pick up on time.
Oh, you were like sitting there waiting.
Yeah, like
Hoping they didn't,
that was gonna be
hoping they
mine.
didn't
Yeah.
show up. That's
Yeah.
awesome. David, how about you? First job, how much did you get paid? I feel like the
Oh,
comp
so-
guy's gonna remember this, right?
So yeah, I ran my own lawn mowing business. I started at age 12, and I made about $10 an hour to start out. So hey, I'll take it.
Yeah, you probably did a whole comp analysis, came in with a whole
Right.
story in terms
How
of why
long
you
it takes me,
more.
and yeah,
Yeah, there's an
tracked out
efficiency
gas and
calculation.
everything else. Yeah,
Totally,
definitely.
totally tracks. All right, Miss Bischoff, how about you? What was your first job and how much did you get paid? Make it
Well,
appropriate.
My first job was working for the family business. I don't think I got paid anything, but my first paid job was I worked for Cub Foods as a cashier, and I was a complete menace.
And nobody even remotely looks surprised. All right, Bethany, how about you? What was your first job and how much did you get paid?
Yeah, my first job, kind of like David, I cleaned homes in my area, and I did $10 an hour, which was pretty good. I think I was 12 when I started. I found out that there was more money in cleaning than there was in babysitting, so I went that route. And then the first official job was a coffee shop in Long Lake, Minnesota, Lake Country Coffee, if anyone drove by in the 90s. Yeah. So yeah, that was it. But cleaning is officially the first one.
I love it. So I was saying my first job was fresh fruit and yogurt in Maplewood Mall at $4.15 an hour. So I apparently didn't negotiate nearly as well as some of you and did a little better than others. So I guess I'll just take that as the whatever it might be. Well, thank you all, and thank you for all coming back. Again, from Lakeside, before I'm going to say thank you probably 14 times just to have your guys' voice a second time and to bring you guys back. So thank you both, all of you, for being here and continuing to share the conversation. I know even on our prep calls, I think we all found the community that we've been able to build to be pretty incredible and the conversations to be really dynamic. And I have no doubt that we'll go that same direction today. So thank you guys. For those of you that potentially might be new to Lakeside Chats, I'm going to just do a quick rules of engagement because I run these chats just a little bit different than potentially your other webinars might have looked like. First and foremost, this is a public session, so these are being recorded. This recording will be provided to each of you in a link following up, and you can share the link as needed if somebody wants to rewatch and learn about fresh fruit and yogurt at Maplewood Mall. The deck also will be provided, though you'll see there's not a ton of content in the deck, but we use it as a guide throughout the conversation to make sure that we stay on task, and I'll provide that, as well as any of the links that are referenced throughout. So if throughout the conversation, if we call out a book or we call out a podcast or we call out an article that we read, I'll try to make sure I get that back in your hands as well so that you've got that as follow-up content as well. But we want you guys to stay engaged. So for those of you that are not the 8 faces that are on the conversation today, chat feature, question answer feature, hand feature, reaction feature, all open and available for you guys to use and abuse throughout the conversation today. I truly want to make this as much of a conversation as possible. So if you've got a comment or question, and you'll find that you'll get asked questions throughout as well, we genuinely encourage you to be a part of the conversation as much as we can include you. Your voice is just as important as ours. But again, this is positive discussion. We're going to try to keep it as positive. You'll notice, per the request of many of us, we are all wearing bright colors to exude positivity in what might not always seem like a 2025 that we're all a little potentially a little skeptical about. So we're bringing some positivity even just in our colorful faces today. But there are no right answers. I think part of what you're going to hear through the conversation today is that this is truly a place for conversation or starting a conversation and for sharing information. But by no means are you going to walk away with some immediate answer to every question that you might have, though we want you to ask them anyway. Awesome. with that, I want to get everyone using the chat feature, and I am a believer of the word of the year. I started it probably 4 years ago. And so I thought in the idea of looking back into 2024 as we do the Christmas past starting, did you have a word of the year? If not, what maybe should it have been at the beginning of this year? I was saying this to Kristen, was your word of the year really manifest? Or should it have been manifest? Oh, that's
I
awesome.
think it probably should have been, but yeah. Isn't
Can
that
you
funny?
make it your word of 2025 too?
Yes,
Can you just hold
I
on
will.
for me? That'd be great. My word of the year was purpose. Though I even bought myself a bracelet at the beginning of the year and it broke about 2 weeks into the year. And I didn't know if that was that there was a symbolism to the breaking of the word purpose. I'm seeing transformation, intention, determined, grit. These are great words. Anyone else from the call, any of the voices on the call, any of the other of you have a word of the year or feel like you should have had a word of the year?
Yeah, and I just put it in the chat. Mine was embodiment, really kind of like living what I say, right? Kind of the integrity of words and actions matching. Yeah.
Yeah. David, yours was dynamic. How did you pick dynamic?
Yeah, definitely. Just because of the market that was out there, all the regulations and compliance issues coming down the pipeline, just a lot to juggle. Maybe that's another word. Is juggle.
Yeah. Well, that's true. All right. Well, great. And it sounds like, again, I appreciate all these words. I've, if any of you want to follow up with me, I've got my word of the year, I think, coined for 2025, though I'm still working on it. So if anyone wants to have a follow-up discussion around brainstorming around 2025 years, I'm happy to do so. But let's jump in and do a quick look back of 2024. So with that, I'm going to ask Kate and Abby to turn their mics off. Or turn their mics on, I guess. Take yourself off mute. And we want to do a quick look back at 2024. So Kate, you and I did the very first Lakeside chat in January of 2024. And we talked about kind of trends or predictions for what we anticipated we'd be coming into 2024. Quick reaction from you, thinking back to nearly 365 days ago to now. How close were you? Was there anything that you were surprised by or things that you were like, yep, got that one?
I think I was okay. I think this 2024 was supposed to be kind of a little bit of a calm year after a tumultuous 2023, especially coming out of the Minnesota State Legislature. And it was a much calmer year for changes at the state level, but everybody was trying to catch up with what the changes had been in 2023 because 2024 was not a budget year out of the legislature. So there weren't going to be huge policy changes that would need money attached to them. So I think I was pretty okay generally.
Yeah. Abby, how about you? So from more of a, I'm going to say sort of a micro level. So Kate sort of talked at it from the macro level. Abby, from the micro level at Foley Mansfield, was there any particular sort of, would the year look the way you expected the year to look in your COO/HR role?
Well, yes and no. I mean, if I were to choose a word for 2024, and this is in hindsight, I would say it was a blur, or maybe like it went by in a blink.
Yeah.
Because just like a lot of times the things we plan on doing or that we expect to do, just, we don't always have time for it. So I think that some of the things I was really hoping to tackle in 2024, I'm just now getting to, and will probably push into 2025. Probably not alone in that sentiment, though.
No, I don't think you are at all. All right, so this was actually a slide that we used in that January conversation, Kate. So this was one of those ones where we looked to our delightful friends at the Harvard Business Review to tell us what they thought was going to happen in 2024. And I just wanted, again, and I know you guys have had a chance to look through the list. Are there any of the 9 topics that you are, one, looking back, surprised they thought was going to happen, and or you are anticipating will still continue, that trend has continued or sort of picked up the way you thought it would?
Well, when I looked at this list, I laughed out loud at number 3 on the 4-day work weeks, because we're going into 2025 with no overtime, We're looking at no changes in minimum wage. We're going to be looking at grinding. And so it made me laugh out loud that I don't think this is anywhere near our future for 2025, or at least for the next 4 years. And so that one made me laugh out loud. Like that was a nice, pie in the sky dream that we had, but not going to be happening.
I will say that I actually really landed on that one too, Kate, but I took it maybe from a different perspective, which is that I think employees are sort of effectively working 4-day work weeks, and not because they are, lazy, but probably because they're feeling really overworked and burned out. And so it's really hard to keep up that, pace for 5 straight days. So whether they are, walking away from their desk for a full day, or doing it a little bit each day, or just sort of, zoning out to the tune of 1 full day a week, I think it's happening. It's just not happening in the way that we necessarily think a 4-day work week looks like.
And I think that's a great observation, because I think that's true that there's we're so burnt out and working so hard that effectively we're getting there. I just don't think the law is going to recognize it anytime soon. And so there's going to be this mindset of employers that they can continue to expect you to be that 5-day, maybe even 6-day, or at least on-callness that's coming up. I mean, SHRM this week sued the state of New Jersey over New Jersey's new rule of, if you call after working hours, that's prohibited. It only can be an emergency situation. SHRM sued the state of New Jersey, saying this rule is horrible. And so I think functionally, I think you're right that they're there. It's just we're not going to recognize it anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm going to call out another one. I know that in our prep conversation, number 8 was another one that we sort of highlighted as this conversation of that DEI won't disappear, but we feel like it's going to become more embedded some way. And I know that I don't mean to go us down a sad or sort of a more of a wah sort of rabbit hole here. But Kate, Abby, what about number 8 for you? Abby, I'm going to ask you pointed. Are you guys in your, again, going micro versus macro, where is DEI living in your space today?
So, I work at a law firm. We are, very pro DEI, and for a couple different reasons. One of them is, it's a push from clients in a lot of cases. So clients are really looking and asking questions about who's working on their matters, who is coming to the table for relationship building meetings, things like that. And then just sort of from a more pro firm perspective, we need more attorneys. We need more people to do the work. And so if I guess if you're looking at underrepresented or traditionally underrepresented groups of people, that's just another resource to tap. So we're taking the double down stance on DEI. We're not going to back away from it. And I'm really proud of the way my firm has responded to some of the recent news, which I think Kate will probably touch on.
Kate, so then let's look at it from a macro level. So I know that obviously as you're in and out and working on the employment law side of it, are you still seeing DE&I showing up in the conversations you're having?
I think the conversation is going to be significantly less public because of the backlash. And I use backlash in air quotes because we know, like, there are hundreds of studies out there that show the more diverse and inclusive your workplace is, the better your P&L looks like, the better more profit you've got. So I think there's going to be more covert or at least implicit DEI motions that are going to be happening from talent acquisition and HR in general. But I don't think they're going to put that out for the public for fear of that smaller than 1/3 of people who think it's the worst. I think within the first 30 days, we're going to lose affirmative action because it's an executive order. And so all of those kind of initiations of, getting the old school, we're going to publicize this, all that stuff, I think that's going to go away. But smart businesses understand the economic impact of having an effective DEI program. So I think it's going to be more covert than it is going to be just out there as like we're the shining example on the hill.
Yeah. I think that that's a fair statement. I think that it exists, but it's an underlying thread versus it being an initiative that you're going to hear broadcast, is what I'm hearing you guys both kind of say. Abby, even what I'm hearing you say, right? Like it's happening and we're double downing it. It's now it is probably in the vein of what 8 says, more embedded, versus it feeling like it's this big shiny object that we're putting our hands on. The last one that I wanted to add, just to jump into, because I feel like we would be remiss if I feel like any webinar lately didn't bring up AI, at least to some degree. But I would just say, I think for me individually, the use of AI has been one of those ones where I think I went into 2024 a bit more of a skeptic, and I've left 2024 way more of somebody who's looking to it as a tool and as a resource, and let's be honest, as a tab that's always open on my web browser. What would you guys say about the AI, the use of AI, or sort of the embedment of AI as we're seeing it in the workplace? And you guys pick. Kate, Abby, either.
So I'll start. You're absolutely right. A year ago, there was a lot more skepticism at my firm, and I'll speak for the 2 different sides of my business. So like client facing, that's a little bit different. We have to consider a lot of things, including privacy and ethical responsibilities and things. But so it's been slow to get the attorneys that I work with to really start thinking about it. However, internally and maybe more administratively, like we've really picked up the pace and adopted a lot of the AI technologies, and just, gotten more used to thinking about what can I do differently to make this job easier or more accurate, or, to start that creative process. So, I'm really excited about continuing that and building more momentum in 2025.
Kate, what would you add?
I really don't like AI because I'm really concerned about the environment and it takes so much energy. So I'm going to continue to be a skeptic. And also because whenever we have now hundreds of more examples of the discriminatory impact of AI and missing things. And so I think there's potential for a lot more litigation around it, particularly when it's aiding an employer's decision. But the next EEOC might not be one to jump on that bandwagon. Yeah. So I think it's going to be a statewide kind of looking at it. And I know there's several Minnesota state legislators who are very interested in the discriminatory impact. So I think we're going to see it.
Yeah. Anyone else? I'm just curious from the rest of the room. Any others that stood out to you guys in terms of ones that you would you're surprised by, or yes, of course, or of course, you know what I mean? I'm just curious from where any of the rest of you as being, yeah, John, bring it.
Number 9, I think we're going to see massive change in what we thought was normal is no longer going to be normal. And I think this is a year when a lot of that stuff is going to come to a head.
I think you're right. I'm going to guess, John, that you're giving us a bit of a prediction for the predictions as we think about going into 2025 as well.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, let's thank you both. Kate, Abby, thank you again. This was great. I want to jump as we move forward and we move. Now the Christmas past has left us and now Christmas present has arrived. Trisha and Bethany, let's talk about today and the workforce by which we are currently living in. So now we've looked at trends. We've gotten ideas to kind of the impacts both legislatively and that macro and micro level as well. But there's this, and I think the word that we talked about even was that sort of like interpersonal piece that we're seeing in the workplace that I wanted to make sure that we talk about in today's conversation. So before I'm going to jump in, because Bethany, I know this was I did, you sort of, in the interest of links I will share to those of you on today's call, I will send you the link that you see here. Bethany, you want to talk a little bit about what Josh Bersin says and the one of the quotes I pulled, you're right, I probably could have pulled a couple of them from this, from the LinkedIn talk that I watched. But Bethany, you led with this as we were talking about the nature of today's workforce. You want to just speak to this a little?
Yeah, thanks so much, Erin. Yeah, when I saw this video, all of you, I'm sure, know Josh Bersin is, a data guru. I think, Kate, you lovingly refer to him as a robot about data. And yeah, he's a great data guy. And when I saw this video, I felt like all of my anecdotal data of working with my clients globally was affirmed. I felt like the data showed what I had been hearing from my clients. And you see it on the slide here. What he said, and you'll see this in the video, is he said that the workforce in the U.S. is staying flat, so more work is happening with less people. So gross domestic product is higher than ever, but the workforce has remained flat. So less people are doing more work. And I feel that with every client that I work with. This gets to the comment that John made just as we transitioned into this section. We actually did a cohort for a client, and we ended up talking about this superhero dynamic. Really, essentially what's happening is in kind of every part of the market, I have clients in nonprofit, private, public, on the Hill in DC, and globally. So I've got this kind of wide swath of data that I pull from. Everyone's being asked to be a superhero. When they move from one organization to another, they think it's going to be different, and then they're superheroes at the next organization. So there's a theme that I'm seeing, and that there's kind of a critical point that I'm seeing and sensing from my clients that are saying, hey, something's got to give. This gets to a lot of the themes that we just heard from Kate and Abby as well. So, I think that there's we talked a little bit about this in our prep call too. It's environmental and both a micro organizational, each organization is struggling with this, but I do think there's a macro element to what we're seeing as well. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So my clients are burning out, they're feeling fatigued. And then the other layer of what I work with a lot with my clients is they're struggling with, as Erin mentioned, what's happening with their managers, what's happening with their leaders, how communication is happening. Erin, this is kind of teeing up the next slide I know you have, but it's the environment, again, kind of in really tangible. The volume of the work is feeling really intense. And also return to the office mandates are getting really tricky for people. Where there is flexibility and not flexibility is getting tricky. There's tons of that in the news. So there's kind of this boiling point that's happening from both a volume of work perspective, but also the environments that my clients are sitting in with their leaders and managers. So on the positive note, Erin, you mentioned, let's stay positive. There's a lot of work around this. There's a lot of work to do to support people in the environment that we're all in when we're being asked to do a lot with fewer and fewer resources and in some cases, less and less support.
So Tricia, I want to turn this then over to you as we talk about the characteristics of what we're seeing as in today's workforce and sort of these 5 characteristics. And I know you helped me sort of put was 13 into 5 in a way that makes it feel a little more tangible. Tricia, do you want to speak to this list a little bit and just talk about where you're seeing the state of work today?
Yeah. So I think what's interesting, kind of paralleling what Bethany said, is and I'm going to reference a quote that just as I was reviewing, noted in the HBR Harvard Business Review article that we looked at. And there was this standalone sentence that said, the way we work has changed, and so has leadership. And I'm not sure that I agree with that. I think we're on a movement to the way that we work has changed, but we've still very much in my mind got an old guard that likes it the way it was. The newer generations, and not just one of them, that are like, this is that gotta go. This is ridiculous. Like, why would anybody have done this? I don't choose to escalate to the top. Like, I just want to earn my paycheck, etc. And then kind of the middle managers up through kind of the lowest level of senior leaders saying, how do I accommodate both? And so where I think those meet in the middle is there's number 1 and number 2 on this slide. all folks are still interested in really meaningful work and they're craving engagement in the workplace. So there's a lot of, all the data around loneliness and lack of engagement. There's an opportunity here to engage people in really meaningful work that requires a lot of personalization. What I want, what Erin wants, what Bethany wants, what John wants are all very different. And I think that's a leadership skill that has to be developed. I do think what Josh Bersin referenced and what Bethany talked about is really true. Hear it every day. People feel ridiculously overworked. That's leading to a lot of disenfranchisement and a lot of growth in small businesses where people are, especially women, are saying, I'm out. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to do what I love, meaningful work, and I'm going to do it on my own schedule and, with my own rules. And I think this, and I like the word demand for flexibility and work-life balance. My younger generation clients, there's no scenario in which this 50, 60-hour work week works for them. And they're really demanding about the need for flexibility. And I think this employers doing the return to work thing when we allowed it during COVID and now demanding folks demand that they come back is really seen now as a penalty. We showed you that it could work and you're just aligned with the old way that it worked. And then I think just like number 5 and number 6 there, this because of we've got folks working remote and hybrid and in the office, this need for clear and aligned communication. I read something last week about so these younger generations do require a lot more direction. For whatever reason, they are looking for a little more specificity on what is it that you want and kind of get me started on that. And that requires a lot more communication from leaders. And yet they really also they value development. And I'm seeing that in companies putting more money, some of them largely taking their DEI budget and moving that into leadership development and saying, that's how we're going to approach this, is we're going to make it a leadership competency and help develop people rather than focus that on DEI.
Yeah. Bethany, what would you add to what Trisha said there? I just want to make sure, I know you're sitting there sort of nodding and smiling throughout, and I just want to make sure that if there's anything that you'd layer in there, that you bring it in.
I just fully agree. I really don't have anything to add. I think, Trisha, you really, you summarized that really well. I actually don't have anything to add. Nope.
That's perfectly fine. So let's talk about leadership. Let's talk about the skills piece of it. So I think where there's an agreement. I mean, the superhero, as I heard this, as I was listening to you talk about the superhero piece of it, it's like Spider-Man wants to go back to just being Peter Parker, is what I'm hearing. This like was the original, like that's what I had in my head, was this like, can I give away this sort of Venom thing and just go back to being like, that sounds great. But I think at the same time, there's this expectation to make sure that from the leadership vein that we are thinking about how we approach this new version of workers in a way that they stay motivated, that they find the value piece of it that we talked about. And at the same time, we recognize leaders are feeling that same level of burnout, right? That same burnout is happening from both ends. And so that they feel it themselves, yet it's hard to manage too. So I'm curious as we look at this piece of it, and this comes from another HBR article, is this essential leadership skills, and how do we develop leadership skills to sort of be the right leader for the next generation or for this current sort of dynamic work. I'm going to use David's word, dynamic workforce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've seen in the data, I actually had the opportunity to do a report for a client, which was a deep research report on kind of the state of HR right now. And one of the themes that's emerging is as the world does get more automated, we are going to have to become more human, because we're always going to have humans working in human spaces. And I think that as Trisha kind of laid out all of these tensions, people are people. They still want meaningful work. They still want to have the balance and the flexibility, especially since we learned that we can do that. And as automation and demands kind of increase around us, we're going to need all of these things that you see on this list. As Trisha said, kind of that ability to be flexible with the individual, understanding that we are not robots, actually. We are emotional beings wherever we go, and that's in the workspace. ways, whether we're at home or in the office. We are really complex beings, and in a wonderful way. And so one of the themes that I'm seeing is being able to do all of these things, which is essentially a good list of how to work with human beings. That's just going to increase as we automate, because there is going to be a lot of demand that's going to continue to be there, and how we create sustainable environments for us to kind of do our best and get our best, get the best out of us, and not necessarily for a GDP reason, but just because we're beings that actually do like to work. We have work built into us. So at the risk of waxing philosophical for a second, if all of us were off of Teams and everything was a little bit more baselined, I lived in East Africa for 5 years. We would be walking to get water. We would be making sure that our homes were safe and secure. We would be taking care of our children and our elderly. Work is built into our DNA. We'd be working no matter what. So work is in us, right? And the more meaningful, the better. I'm with you, Tricia. We all want to do something. Dana Pink wrote a great book just called, oh gosh, I can't remember it. I've heard Daniel Pink. I'll send it around. He's got a great book about kind of human motivation and work, and that we work even when we don't get paid. It's in us. So I'll stop talking about that. But yeah,
No.
we have work in us.
It's a beautiful sentiment. So I think it's a good reminder too. I feel like the idea that, especially as we consider we all live with these within arm's reach, and I can hop on a game or stream whatever, that it's that intrinsic work piece of it lives within us, I think is, God, I hope so. Like, there's just I want that to be the case. And yes, I want that for all of the 62 of us that are on this call. But let's be honest, I really want it for those 2 kids I've got sitting at home who I binge watch things or watch inappropriate amounts of YouTube. And I want that concept of work to continue to live to the next generation as well. So I think that's beautiful.
Good. I'm glad. Luckily, it's in our DNA. It's just true. And we do have a lot competing for our attention, right? So that's another word to kind of bring out into the space is where our attention goes, a lot follows that. And there's kind of a battle for that every day for all of us. And that gets back to the demands placed on us to pay attention to a lot of things. And so that gets back to kind of the point here that really stands out to me in this list is how human we are, and how we're going to have to continue to learn how to work with human beings, I think, in really new and powerful ways as we get more automated.
I got a hypothesis I want to throw out.
David, bring it.
And I don't want to preempt something we're talking about. A lot of times we talk about pendulums, right? And who has the power in the workforce? Is it the employer or the employee? Obviously, coming out of COVID, it swung back to the employee a little bit, and people sought these things. They sought these environments, these cultures, and now the pendulum is coming back more to equilibrium. And when you talk about some of the pressures people are feeling, overworked, high demand, it's hard to do these things, right? And my hypothesis is also, I'm going to go a step further. Do employers not want to give that power up again, so they're hesitant to do these things? I don't know, but that's good business. But I do feel there's some employers are being a little, they're hard. They're being too hard on their employees, and we were talking about this, but because they don't want to give it up again. I think employers need to wake up a little bit. I don't want to preempt it. We'll talk more then.
No,
I think there's that saying too that people will always work hard for what they helped create. And it goes to kind of 3, 4, and 5 here. Like we've got to let people participate. That is a core leadership value and skill that needs to be built. It's no more set the vision. It's really take in lots of different information and get people moving in a common direction. And that's a very different leadership skill. The idea of leading versus being the leader versus coordinating folks and moving them in a leadership way, not a management way. I think that folks really have to look internally and get feedback on their leadership style to make that adjustment.
Yeah. Kate, what were you going to say?
I would add that we're in the, and this might be a little too quippy for everybody, but I do think we're in the end stages of capitalism, right? That it is, we're those people who are superheroes, they get the new job, they get the new money. management is looking at that amount of money and going, holy cow, this person is going to have to be absolutely spectacular to justify this amount of money. And then they get burnt out because they didn't really change any kind of cultural thing. There's just new expectations because they have all this money. I think the change in management is coming, but we're in the last throes of, I need to grind as much as possible. I need to grind my people as much as possible in order to be profitable. And this idea that a business isn't successful unless it's constantly growing, I think we're in the last stages of that. I think we're going that the recognition of that we don't have to grow. We need to be comfortable. We should have a little fun at work. Those things are this particular, and I don't like gender or generational stereotypes too much, but I think there is part of, can I go to work and get a paycheck and have fun? Or rather than the ambition is built into me and I need to do everything all the time. I think that is what's going to be changing.
John, were you going to say something? And then I want to keep moving.
I think, Kate, that's spot on. What's interesting to me is the friction that's absolutely happening is that the friction that creates with our shareholder economy, right? Like we have to be profitable every single quarter, and it's not real, it's not sustainable. And so there's going to be a tremendous amount of friction as all of this moves into whatever the next state is going to be, which is not its current state.
Yeah. All right. Well, I actually want to turn it over to our other people that are on the call for this next kind of to kick us off into the next question, because I think what we're saying is the appropriate right catalyst to this question. So as we start to think about what we're taking from 2024 and bringing to 2025, both good and bad, what do we think is going to have the biggest impact on our future state? So we're going to talk predictions and what we think is going to come forward, but what do we think is going to be what are some of those things that are going to have a drastic impact on the workforce come 2025? Any of you want to go while we wait for people to pop into the chat?
Well, I think it's interesting with all the big layoffs that have happened in the last, especially the last couple of weeks after the holiday. People are starting to rethink how and what they're going to do. I think it'll be very interesting to see, and we'll talk a little bit about this too, I'm sure, going forward. But we're going to see new businesses pop up. We're going to see fractional starting to really take off, and I'll let the fractional king talk about that a little bit more. But I think it's going to be a very interesting time because it is people who have always had in their mind, hey, I might want to start a business. Now they may have that opportunity to do that. And that's what happened to me when I started Lakeside. It was after, my role had been eliminated due to an acquisition. And I was able to take that chance because I had severance, I had benefits covered, I had all these things, and it was that opportunity. So we may see more businesses pop up. We may see more innovation, more creativity coming too.
So we think the impact of the layoffs will have a big impact. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. John, what were you going to say?
Yeah, 100%. And I think what is going to be the gas in that engine is we are really, really changing our values around our lives. I mean, we are absolutely, the data is like, we are quiet quitting. We are the next generation. There's no freaking way I'm signing up for what you poor Gen Xers signed up for. Our values are shifting at a tectonic level plate. And when values shift like this, cultures change. And so I think that's going to be the biggest impact in the workforce. Yes, it's going to spur a lot more fractional. I think it's going to spur a lot more companies like, I can't continue to micromanage these people. I'm going to burn out as a leader. I don't even want the freaking money anymore. I want a life. So I think the values change from what Kate was talking about, what really matters in our lives, I think is going to be one of the biggest drivers.
Well, we're getting reactions, but I'm not getting chats. So we're going to actually just jump right into predicting. So let's go to the next section. So we've got, by no means is it like best for last in any situation here. I don't want any of you to feel that way. But we've got David, John, and Kristen talking about their predictions for the future. And so I'm just going to add my lovely little visual here as the wherever we decide to take it. So David, let's start with you. Let's talk money, right? Let's go with the idea of, you've talked about the pendulum switching as you've busted out what I have to imagine is a magic ball at your house because of the work that you do. What do you see from the compensation trends piece of it going into 2025?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think a lot about conflicting forces. There are so many things that are at odds against each other. Um, for example, unemployment started to go up for the first time since COVID, but the cost of employment is going down. So it's like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. You're seeing people burning out, like you said, but then you're also seeing companies missing their numbers. You have benefit costs, or some places it's flat. Other companies are seeing 30% increases. So there's just so many things happening out there in the marketplace that are at odds against one another, and something's going to have to give. I do believe there is a lot of friction happening between employers and employees, in that we're not delivering the things that they're looking for. And I do believe it's going to create some different avenues. And just like you just talked about, people are going to start making different choices. And, when compensation increases are going to be for the second year in a row below inflation, that hurts, right? And so that's not only I need to make more money, is this really worth it to me? So I do think, I hate to say this, but employers need to wake up a little bit. And start acknowledging some of these things that are happening. Because like I said a few minutes ago, I think they're very scared of giving up the power that they gained back. So I really think that's why some of these things are happening, is I don't want to go back to where I have to pay people 2-3 times what I think they're worth. Because now I did that, and now I don't have, my costs are too high. I'm not getting the productivity, like somebody said, out of that high paid employer. So again, a lot of just really conflicting things. I think something's going to give. I really do.
Yeah. I know we're seeing it now coming through the chat. So thank you for those of you that are chiming in. I think we're seeing this conversation around well-being. I think, Monica, I love what you put in there with the idea of this short-term, long-term conversation. Kristen, not to sort of tack into that, but I'm curious, coming out of the layoff piece of it and knowing, obviously we sit in the staffing space. I would just like to get your perspectives on kind of what are your trends or things that you're expecting we're gonna see in that space.
Yeah, it's really interesting because companies are cutting really deep, and we haven't seen this in a while, where they're cutting some great talent. They're cutting people that have been with the organization since the beginning of their career, the people that were extremely loyal, which is it's sad to see, because to that point that Monica just made, is they're making decisions, for short-term gain, and instead of, hopefully they're being thoughtful in some of these decisions, you hope, but there are so many opportunities to be able to rethink how we do our work, to, involve others and not making decisions in the vacuum. But I will say that, for us, who support small businesses, we're getting some great talent to be able to go into some of these small businesses, and they're having huge impact. Now it's a change and it's an adjustment, especially for some of these individuals that have been only working in big corporate. But if we can really leverage some of this opportunity out there, small businesses have a great opportunity to get some amazing talent. And, it'll be an interesting shift as well for companies, people looking to make changes. They may not want to go to the big companies anymore too.
Yeah. John, as I think to Kristen's point, I think there's this surge too, and you've scratched the surface on a couple of the things that you said thus far when we talk about the gig/fractional workforce. Do you want to talk about what you're seeing or what you're anticipating going into 2025 in that arena?
Yeah, you bet. There's a couple of things. We're seeing a great growth on both sides of the equation of this whole fractional thing. People coming out of corporate, usually it's about however they leave corporate, if they've been laid off or whatever. It's like, my values don't fit in that world anymore. They just don't fit. I need my family. I need my health. Bethany made a great point. We all are hardwired to work. It's built in us. And your best work comes when you, in our coursework, like you have to know your inner nerd and you have to know your inner guru. And when you know that, you can do anything. And to what Kristen was saying, all of a sudden you have these people that love what they do, they're good at what they do, they're free from the corporate binds, and they can go into those small businesses. That I think is going to be massive. But so much of this, I think, comes down to values and what is sustainable. We cannot sustain what was up until today. It's just, people cannot continue to work that much, put their health on the back burner, put their family on the back burner, particularly when what did you say, David? Where compensation is below, inflation rate, like not a sustainable model, not a sustainable model. So I think the good news is there's a lot of sustainable models out there. In fractional and in Voyager, it kind of comes down to what we call self-sovereignty and self-sufficiency. When more people take their agency back, I'm going to own my future in a way that's healthy for me. To Kristen's point, when those people enter a small business, that's exactly who you want. That's exactly who you want. And it's not really about hours and scope and grind anymore. It's about impact. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So those are some of my thoughts.
No, I think that's great. I feel like I'd be remiss not bringing up the one in the upper left-hand corner. And I don't know if Kate, if you or others of you want to chime in, but the compliance piece of it. I know a lot of people, as we're thinking about the nature of work, and we recognize that there's, I think especially in the local market, right? If I look at the Minnesota market, there's this anticipation for the changes to come with everything from secure and paid family medical leave. And there's some of those pieces that are coming out as well. Kate, Kate or any, I'm looking to Kate just because I know she stays on the pulse of this from the employment law side of it. Anything from a compensation trend that is going to have a dramatic impact on the way of work in 2025, based on your opinion?
I think transparency is going to continue to be the biggest theme, but it's going to come from statewide levels. There's not going to be a federal initiative on pay transparency. There'll be bills that will be introduced, but it'll fizzle out. But I do think the transparency in compensation, knowing exactly how you make money, knowing exactly how your impact affects your wages, are all things that is just going to continue to expand in 2025 and in the future beyond. Because I think we now have salary bands shown or wage disclosure in the job announcement, and it's exploding across the states. We're now, you can't use previous history in questions anymore. You're going to be able to know what your neighbor in the next cube over makes, and that being totally okay, which again is this huge friction between management. But those compensation trends are that it's okay to know that, so that you can hold each other accountable and hold your employer accountable for doing fairness amongst us.
Yeah. David, is that something that's sort of triggering work on your side? I just want to as we're thinking about what Kate's saying and knowing the role, the space you're in, what would you add to that?
No, I totally hear you. I would have guessed it would have been a federal requirement up until the election. And so now, there are going to be states are going to continue to pop up and do their own thing. So it's going to be more sporadic. But at the same time, people want this, regardless of the law. To Kate's, they want to know about it. And another thing I see too, and talking to leaderships, and I'm going to be stereotypical, they tend to be older, right? And so you have this dynamic of what people want is very different. I didn't do that. Why should I have to talk about that? Or my some of those leadership things, my boss never did that for me. Why do I have to do that? But that's what people are looking for. And so again, I keep on thinking about these opposing things of I didn't do that, therefore I don't think we should do that. When there's the people coming in are saying, no, I want this. So everything's just really dynamic and kind of against each other, I think.
Okay. So that is as I'm looking at what my next question is, chat to the room, but chat to the 7 of you I've included. What do you hope will happen in 2025? And that is genuinely written to be as vague and as wide open as you hope it will be. Let's be honest. My big hope happened today when I found out my kid passed his driver's test. So hope got me to December 10th. Now I got to think about what I'm hoping for in 2025. Kristen, I'm going to start with you. I feel like we ended with you last time.
Manifesting, yes, that we'll do the manifesting. No, but for me, I really hope that people aren't living in fear and they take a deep breath and recognize that sometimes change drives opportunity. And to take that time to take a deep breath and make sure they realize that, you know what, this sucks, but I'm going to get through it, and utilize the resources and the people that are available to them that want to help. So for me, I really hope that people aren't living in fear.
Bethany, what do you
Kristen, if I
hope
can
for?
follow, sorry, if I can
go
quickly
ahead,
follow
David.
up. You're so right. The concept of job security entered back into employee surveys for the first time since COVID this year. And so I do think people are partly living in you're right, and it's unfortunate. So sorry, I just want to quick add that because I think it's one of the reasons why people are putting up with some of these forces.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Okay, Bethany, what would you say? What are you hoping for 2025?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of build on what Kristen and David said, and I'm actually going to quote John. So, John, I'm going to steal your thunder here so you can just repeat it. You already said it. I really love this this idea of finding agency, and a lot of people maybe can't or won't break out and work for themselves yet, but we have agency every single day. We have little choices we can make, little areas that we can control, right? There's a lot that we can't control, but as Kristen and David just said, we can make choices that are really small and create huge impacts every day. And there is agency available to us every day. And I think that's a really hopeful perspective, John. So thanks for bringing that word into the space. And that's my hope, is that we find that agency every day for where we can make choices that are aligned with our values.
Abby, what do you hope for 2020? Oh, sorry, Kate. I saw your hand. Sorry.
I'll give Abby just like 2 more seconds to think, but I want to play off of what Becky said in the chat before. I hope that we are able to find moments of joy everywhere.
Yeah.
Because this is going to be really hard. And I hope that we still, like, my way of finding joy is to tell strangers dirty dad jokes because it makes them laugh. It makes my day. I absolutely love it. I try not to tell anybody who's actually working because I do have a little bit of integrity, but I do hope that we take those moments to find joy.
Yeah. Abby, what do you hope for in 2025?
I'm gonna quote something that Trisha said earlier, or reflect back on something Trisha said earlier, which is, I hope there's more understanding of how to have adaptive communication, and then to give more clear direction to people. I think it would be great if there was an understanding that the request for clear direction or alignment, goal alignment, things like that isn't a character flaw or a sign that you're never going to be a good employee. It's just that you're maybe somebody who's learning it differently, or not to make it about generations, but the newer generations, like, they had things much more laid out for them as they were coming up. So I hope there's a better understanding of that. I would like to promote that within my organization as well.
I love that. All right, so Trisha, she called you out, so I'm going to call you. I'm going to just follow right in alignment there. Trisha, what do you hope for in 2025?
Gosh, I think so aligned. When you said that, I just jotted down to myself, agency leading to optimism. So I think if folks can just take back their own control, so much solves for itself.
Yeah, I think Andrea put it in the chat that we want people to take bets on themselves. I love that. So if you haven't hearted Andrea's quote there, make sure you give her the love of that comment. John, I think you are my last. I think I asked everyone else, right? I got to the rest of you. John, what do you hope for in 2025?
Yeah, I hope the awakening continues. I really do. I hope the people really continue to wake up, to take that agency. Quite honestly, it's the founding principles of America. Like, we were all entrepreneurs and self-employed for most of our history. Farmers, blacksmiths, bakers, like, it's you are hardwired to be independent. We got off track on that. And so I think I really hope people take their agency back, because I think there's tremendous opportunity in that. We got off track with that, and it's time to take it back.
Well, I told you I was going to say it at least a couple more times. And so this is my big and then final big thank you to all of you, the 60 plus of us that took the time this morning to be here, and the 400 plus that have attended a Lakeside chat throughout 2025 or 2024. I just want to thank you all for making this 2024 really great, for constantly being in a place of creating really great conversation that I think is something that I've been really proud of, and something that I think is one of those things that we scratched the surface in this hour, but I think we scratched the surface in a way that like really created the right level of conversation and opened people's eyes up at the same time. So for the 7 of you and I think there was another 9 others that have been on my Lakeside chats over the course of 2024. Thank you so much. I look forward to an even better 2025. We're going to keep that optimism rolling. And with that, I want you to just know that more Lakeside chats are coming in 2025. So watch your inbox and or LinkedIn feeds to follow. But with that, happy 2025, everyone.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.